As of April 5th, a new law went into effect that requires healthcare organizations to allow patients immediate access to their electronic health records, which includes their test results, imaging studies, and doctor's notes. And while therapy notes are specifically excluded, psychiatrists do not typically keep separate therapy notes. Hi, I'm Dr. Renee Kohansky, and welcome to episode 15 of Clinical Correlation. So to quote Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, tell me something. Are you happy in this modern world, or do you need more? Is there something else you're searching for? Because surely this isn't Marcus Welby, MD, for those of you who remember, nor is it St. Elsewhere, or ER, or even my hero, Samuel Shem's House of God. It's not even the medicine of my residency, or many of your residencies, or even the medicine of 2019. It's not even medicine. It's healthcare. So there's a lot to unpack in this mandate, which is part of the 21st Century Cures Act, put forth under the auspices of patient transparency, shorthandedly referred to as open notes. As always, each of us needs to do our own research. What do you think of the word mandate? You all good with that? Because this is the modern world into which our new generation of physicians will be born. Medscape writes that a research advocacy group in Boston called Open Notes found advantages to allowing this access, including more accurate medical records and better medication compliance, and that despite physician belief they would spend more time on notes because of the mandate, in reality only 1/3 of the 1,000 surveyed doctors actually required more time. I'm wondering, what kind of behemoth have we created? Or who has created this? Our medical notes began its modest but simple life as a communication tool to ourselves and to our colleagues, sometimes serving as a reminder of things to complete or thoughts of what to do next if X, Y, or Z occurred. It was a very functional document, quite lovely in fact. Then somehow, somewhere, it morphed into its own presence in the treating room. There was the patient, us, and the thing called the note or chart, an entity unto itself. And then this chart note thing became the master of remuneration. Could you guys actually imagine if attorneys, accountants, or legislators were required to get paid based on EHRs? I mean, really. But then the note wasn't just a mechanism for billing our time. Somewhere in this strange process, someone other than us determined what was relevant in this note and how much we could bill for what work we did, and then tried to quantify our thinking into codes like 99214 and 99213, all typed neatly into an EHR. So we all did the mandatory undergraduate calc, physics, chem, organic. And then we followed that with 4 years of medical school, and then a year of internship, and 3 years of residency, and often a year of fellowship. Who in a million years would have guessed our most profound skill would be our typing skills? How many words per minute can you type? Do be sure to include that in your vitae. To quote the Talking Heads, and you may find yourself in another part of the world, and you may find yourself behind the wheel of a large automobile, and you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? How did we get here? As best I can tell, it may have started with that regulation called HIPAA. Incidentally, how many of you realize you actually don't need a HIPAA release when you refer a patient to a colleague because you've actually referred the patient? You're asking the colleague for information, so the HIPAA release is redundant, and it can get in the way. I've bumped up against this when I've, for example, sent a patient to an IOP, and then the IOP doesn't release the information to me if the patient hasn't signed a HIPAA, but it's kind of like doesn't make sense because I've referred the patient to them. But anyways, I digress. So how many of you think HIPAA laws are redundant? Remember, medicine has always had confidentiality requirements, and we in psychiatry are so the trendsetters on confidentiality. And all this HIPAA stuff is even more ironic because with all the TOSs that we sign today, terms of services, everybody and their uncle is collecting all kinds of information. You may be watching your TV or your iPad, but your TV and your iPad are watching you. Paranoia is the new breakfast food. Forget any kind of privacy. We all know that. Patients are forced to sign their privacy away when they agree to insurance coverage. So HIPAA morphed our sweet little valuable informational note into a third presence in the room. Then the EHR transformed the now third presence note into a monster tick box note. You know, where you tick off all the boxes on the EHR. Page after page of ticked boxes, often useless information. Truly it is. I perform IMEs. I get to read charts and notes, lots of them. Give me one paragraph of a somewhat legible handwriting or poorly typed assessment plan from somebody's, their own word note over pages and pages of erroneously cut and paste ticked boxes any day of the week. Many frontline EHR warriors report those boxes took hundreds of valuable man-hours away from patient care. Now, the core truth, the real truth about this mandate, this open note mandate, is that the above-mentioned EHR systems that already implement the mega EHR programs have already onboarded this concept of open note for years. We actually, all of us, know this personally because many of us have portals to our own medical records. So open note isn't really such a new concept. It's already here. The only difference now with the mandate is that those who don't adhere will be penalized. So who will be penalized, how, and to what extent remains to be seen. Doctors and allied healthcare professionals in these existing systems that already are doing open note for all intents and purposes have already changed the way they write their notes, or not, they may not have changed it, to address the new member of the chart audience, the patient. For us in psychiatry, it may be different. I was taught that the mental status examination was where we could stretch our creative writing skills, that anybody reading a mental status examination should actually be able to visualize the person that was sitting in front of the person who wrote the mental status examination. It was the place where you could write long, stylish hair, heavily smeared makeup, short skirt in the winter coats in the summer, clanging speech with specific examples. Not because we were passing judgment, but because we are telling the story of the patient. And that story was going to support our diagnosis of mania, our diagnosis of depression. It was going to support a resolving diagnosis. So, while many will hail the mandate open notes as a game changer, I wonder, open note already exists in big institutions. And even in small practices, a patient could always request to see their record. But here it would be done in the privacy of a session where questions could be asked and therapeutic value could be had. So here are my questions. Will our notes continue to convey valuable information to ourselves and to our colleagues, or will we all be reduced to box tickers? Will the once informative mental status examination now be a binary normal appearance versus abnormal, normal speech versus abnormal speech? Will abnormal then become a problematic word? How will we communicate anything of any value? Are we communicating? Maybe it's not an issue. Billing errors are actually currently punishable by time in jail. Innocent errors can be misconstrued. Could it really get much worse than that? It can't, can it? And yet, despite this, I continue to have faith. So long as we all retain our ability to think independently and remember who and what we are. This applies not only to psychiatrists, but to all allied health professionals. And beyond faith, there's something even more important at hand. We have an obligation to our younger generation. As I said in my opening to the Clinical Correlation podcast series, If you live in a world that has only ever known red, you can't possibly explain blue. How do you do that? Well, blue is kind of like red, but it's darker. Well, what do you mean by darker? Is it black? Yeah, it's black, but it's black minus the red. But not really. It's just blue. Blue is experiential. It's a primary color. So what I'm saying is we need to provide a world of red, blue, and the entire rainbow for our younger physicians and all allied professionals. The NOTE mandate is part of an ongoing process, an evolution. And in order for future professionals to assess what parts of this process are beneficial and what parts are not, they have to know what they are forfeiting. And that, my friends and colleagues, falls upon all of us as teachers, scientists, and practitioners of the art of medicine. I'm Dr. Renee Kohansky for Clinical Correlation.